So today's video is going to be the evolve of Anglica Oales. So, Anglica Oales
A few moments later
is a YouTuber that talks about drama and makes commentary videos on YouTube of the beauty community. Like, she also does have a beauty channel as well. So let's start talking. Anglica joined YouTube on April 27th, 2017. Anglica started out by doing reaction videos. 20th of June, Anglica started doing more opinion videos, more videos of drama and opinions. Anglica uploaded on the 20th of June a video about Ryan Franklin. Anglica also talked about how, in a video about how girls, it was seen easy for them on YouTube. Anglica at the beginning talked a lot about the UK YouTube scene. Then Anglica moved into talking about more of the American YouTube scene after a while. Anglica did a lot of videos talking about the Zoella scandals, talking about Zoella. The first one was sort of vlogging while driving, which is one where she wasn't paying attention to the road, the penguin book scandal, that kind of thing, one where it was found out for girls online that she had a ghostwriter. There was also the advent calendar scandal. There was a scandal with cordially invited tea, because I think people didn't take well to it, because it was how to host a party when that wasn't really her thing, that wasn't something. Anglica made a video talking about Logan Paul. Anglica also talked a lot about Emma Chamberlain, because Emma Chamberlain was sort of seen gradually less relatable. Anglica with her channel definitely talked about a wide range of creators, it wasn't just the same. Anglica throughout 2018 talked about the YouTube UK scene as opposed to the American YouTuber scene. That was the main bulk of her content. Anglica also did videos and it was called The Road to Irrelevance, talking about irrelevant YouTubers Tanya Burr and Jim Chaplin. They were really relevant at one point, but now they're not so relevant, and sort of their road to irrelevancy. Anglica explains about the trend at the time that's called cancel, about being cancelled. So this was around the time of the first Dramageddon, was where cancel culture started to become a big thing. The 5th of September, Anglica posted her first video talking about family channels. The second half of 2018 into 2019, a lot of family channels, it was more talked about family vlogging. It still is today. Anglica talked about the British YouTube scene and talking about Dan and Phil. Anglica in 2018 did a lot of talk about irrelevancy, that was irrelevancy in the British YouTube scene, that was the bulk of her content in 2018. Anglica talked about a wide range of YouTubers with their road to irrelevancy, and also talked about how Shane Dawson avoided irrelevancy. Shane Dawson changes his content to fit. Also, Anglica talked about the road to irrelevancy of Graveyard Girl. Graveyard Girl didn't change her content. Also about Team 10. Anglica also continued to talk about Zoella scams. Anglica also talked about lots of different dramas, the Saffron Barker drama. Anglica also talked about attention-seeking YouTubers. The 7th of November, Anglica did her first video to do with girl-defined cringe. Anglica talked about YouTubers being hypocrites. Anglica also talked about annoying YouTubers. Anglica continued on with her road to irrelevancy videos like talking about like Gabby Hanna and the Gabby Show, like because it wasn't originally like Gabby Hanna, it was like the Gabby Shows. Angelica talked about like Zoe and Alfie a lot. Like Angelica also at this point started doing like other videos, like posting her everyday makeup routine, as well as continuing to do like the road to irrelevancy, doing one on rice gum. Angelica also talks about a lot of the Gabby Hanna scandals, like Gabby Hanna's lies and scams. Angelica also talked about like Casper Lee and his road to irrelevancy, along with like KSI. Moving into 2019, Angelica like talks about like kind of some of the same people like Rice Gum and Jake Paul. Angelica also talked about Emma Chamberlain, like, because people did at times do have problems with Emma Chamberlain. Angelica talked about Gabby Hanna and her playing the Vix. Also continued to talk about like family channels as well, like the Ace family. Angelica also moved on to like talk about like Manny MUA, which is more like the American YouTube scene, is like Manny and Laura and that. Angelica also continued to do like different content as well, like a self-care makeup video. The 10th of February, Angelica uploaded a video of her trying ASMR, which was something we hadn't seen before. So in 2019, there was definitely like trying some different content, but mainly doing like the Road to Irrelevancy videos. Like, I've seen like bits of Road to Irrelevancy, but I think it was definitely a lot later on I started. Definitely like 2021's when I probably started watching Angelica's content. Angelica also continued to talk about influencer scams, like talking about like Emma Chamberlain scamming her fans. Angelica did like 5-minute crafts, which was something different again. Angelica at this point in her channel in 2019 was doing one commentary video a week, one random video a week, which is definitely interesting. Angelica did a video talking about Jeffree Star and how he was dragged by disappointed tweets. Like, obviously fans were probably, with Jeffree Star, really disappointed in him. Angelica also talked about like other American, so talked about like James Charles and Emma Chamberlain. Angelica also talked about like influencers scanning and manipulating their fans. Like Angela talked about Shane Dawson manipulating his fans. Angelica talked about T-Spill and Jeffree Star. Angelica talked about Jeffree Star and Coachella and what's going on. Angelica made a video talking about Daniela Con. Angelica also talked about influencers being cancelled like James Charles. This is the point where we're starting to get towards Bye Sister. We obviously have the first Dramageddon, which the first Dramageddon involved Manny, Laura, Nikita Dragon, Gabriel Zamora, and Jeffree Star. Jeffree Star was actually involved in like both Dramageddons as well, but I think it's one where it's supposed Jeffree Star kind of made it out of both. I wouldn't say necessarily one either. Angelica talked about how Tati ended James's career, because James lost like 1 million subscribers. Angelica continues to talk about Jeffree Star and how he like fits into like Dramageddon 2. Jeffree Star, from what I know from what I've watched on both Dramageddons, is Jeffree Star came out both of them, which it didn't really affect him as much. Like, I think probably James Charles and Tati were a lot more affected by like this Dramageddon. It's one where I'm like, Tati kind of did start the drama, I'm not gonna lie, but I'll say like Tati definitely started it, but like I feel like Tati saw like a drop in subscribers, so did James. Angelica talked about like the backlash of influencers selling stuff. Angelica also talked about like Jaclyn Hill and her lipsticks. Jaclyn Hill and her lipsticks was called like Lipstick Gate. Angelica like talked quite a bit about Jaclyn Hill's lipsticks. Angelica continued to make videos about Danielle Collin, if I've said her name right. Angelica also does continue to talk about James Charles. Angelica talks about like Kylie Jenner. At this point in her YouTube, did quite a few videos on like Jacqueline Hill. This is when we're getting to a point where I suppose it is the same 1% of people. Like, it is kind of the same creators like Jacqueline Hill, Jeffree Star, James Charles and Tati. This was the video where Jeffree Star sold expired lipsticks. Now we're coming towards midway through 2019. 31st of July, Anglica does her first video talking about like Tana Mojo. This is when we're definitely getting more into the American YouTube scene with Anglica's content. Jella talks about Tana Mojo and how she gets cancelled by like angry fans. Anglica at this point is definitely more the American YouTube scene, but does sprinkle in about the British YouTube scene, talking about how Alfie Days wants to ban drama channels. Anglica continues to talk about like YouTube relevancy. Anglica talks about Olivia Jade. Anglica continues to talk about Jeffree Star, Tana Mojo and Jake Paul. Anglica also continues to talk about like family channels. I wouldn't say like all family channels are bad, like it's really not, but there are some that are bad. But I don't watch like the Ace Family and that personally. I'm not like big into family channels. Anglica continues to talk about James Charles and Daniel Cole. This point is the same 1% of people involved in drama. Anglica also talks about entitled YouTubers. Anglica also talks about Jacqueline Hill playing the victim. Anglica talks about Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star. At this point, Anglica starts doing like get ready with me's and talks about drama. Anglica talks about like Shane Dawson. 10th of November 2019. Anglica posts her first video talking about like Gabby Hanna. Anglica continues to talk about like Jacqueline Hill. At this point, Anglica talks a lot about like, Jacqueline Hill, Gabby Hanna, James Charles, Daniel Cole, and Dramageddon 2 as well. Like, they're the main sort of things. Anglica talks about all the tea that's going on. The 19th of December, Anglica talked about what Nikki Tutorials was called out for. Then it's more Zoella and Alfie, they're back again with drama. Anglica continues to talk about Gabby Hanna, who's called out for old tweets. Moving into 2020, Anglica continues to talk about Tana Mojo and Jake Paul. Anglica did a video talking about a few different topics. Like, Anglica in 2020 started doing like mini teas, which was a few different topics opposed to just one. Like 2020 talks about Gabby Hanna. At this point, Gabby Hanna is not the best at taking accountability, still isn't. Like, Anglica also continues to talk about Jeffree Star and talks more about Nikki Tutorials. Like, at this point, Anglica talks about Jeffree Star fans are not happy. I think it is one where I think fans are definitely disappointed in Jeffree Star. Like, at this point, Anglica talks a lot about, like, Gabby Hanna. Like, Gabby Hanna is not very good at addressing the hate. Then, moving on to Jacqueline Hill and Laura Lee. In 2020, Anglica continues to talk about influencers scamming their fans. Anglica continues to talk about, like, Tana Mojo scanning her fans. 3rd of February, Anglica made a video talking about Marlene Estelle. Anglica talks about, like, influencers that their fans are not happy with them. It's one where Jacqueline Hill's fans are not happy. Anglica talks about Jacqueline Hill's new launch. Anglica talks about Gabby Hanna finally addressing things. Anglica also did like mini teas, which were like multiple topics. Like, at this point, it was a lot of the same people again, like talking about like Jacqueline Hill, James Charles. Anglica continued to talk about Olivia Jade. Anglica talked about the return of Brooke Holt. At this point, Anglica continues to talk about Jeffree Star being called out for tweets. Anglica definitely did like a mix of drama and commentary. Like, it wasn't all drama, it wasn't all commentary. At this point on YouTube, it was definitely like Twitter drama. Angelica talks about like YouTubers getting dragged by tweets on Twitter. On the 6th of April 2020, Angelica started a second channel. This is to talk about things other than drama. Like, this is like a beauty channel with some other stuff. Angelica, her first video on that is her everyday makeup routine. Angelica on her main channel continues to talk about workout. On the 17th of April, Angelica talks about Charli D'Amelio, which now we're moving into more TikTok drama, because this is when TikTok starts getting big. Angelica did a lot of I spent this, is it worth it, here's the tea on makeup brands like Pat McGrath. Angelica also continued to talk about Tanamojo. Angelica also talks about influencers' problematic behaviour. Angelica also did a video on like morning and nighttime skincare. Like, this was definitely different content on this channel to what we'd seen before. Like, we'd seen obviously stuff like this sprinkled in on her main channel, but definitely different stuff. Angelica talked about like influencer shows like James Charles' Instant Influencer. Angelica continued to talk about James Charles and Jeffree Star and Tati. This was when it was called Sister Getting. On the 8th of May 2020, Angelica posted her first anti-haul. Angelica talked about Colleen, if I've said her name wrong, Belenga. Angelica continued to talk about Charli D'Amelio. Angelica also continued to talk about like James Charles' Instant Influencer show. Angelica also talked about like Trisha Paytas. Then this is the time of like Sister Getting. Like, Sister Getting was like 2019, 2020. Angelica also did a video on Fenty Beauty. Angelica also continued to talk about Gabby Hanna. It was like big from like 2020 to 2021. Angelica made a video talking about each episode of James Charles' Instant Influencer. Angelica continued to talk about influencers whose fans were not happy with them. Like, Jeffree Star fans are obviously not happy with her. Angelica did a video where she spent on glossier makeup. Angelica with her second channel was definitely not anti-consumeristic, but wasn't fully consumeristic. It was like that middle ground. Angelica continued doing like mini tea videos. Angelica started doing anti-hauls, which, as we go along, anti-hauls become like a big part. Angelica did first impressions, like trying Hourglass. Angelica continued to talk about like Trisha Paytas. Angelica does a video like shaving her face. Angelica continued doing like mini teas, which is like multiple bits of drama. Angelica did the everyday makeup routine with first impressions.
2,000 years later.
Angelica continued to talk about Gabby Hanna. Angelica talked about empty makeup products. Angelica did her favourite products. Angelica continued to talk about like new makeup that she wasn't gonna buy. 28th of July 2020, Angelica uploaded her first ever project pan. Angelica does like a lot as we go further into this, a lot of project pans. Angelica does a get ready with me using products that she wants to finish. Angelica continues to talk about like Tanamojo and that. Anti-hauls are still quite a big thing. Angelica did her first impressions where there were some fails. Angelica continues to talk about influencers who mess up and their fans are not happy. Angelica does like first impressions. Angela does talk about like the drama getting. Like the drama. There's like Tati drama getting twos like Tati, James, and Shane and Jeffrey get involved. Angelica does her first ever haul, which was an ASOS. Angelica talks about influencers getting exposed. At this point, Angelica did like some consumeristic content and some anti-consumeristic content. Angelica continues to talk about like the drama getting drama. Angelica does like first impressions on her channel with like different brands. Angelica talks about influencers that get called out. Angelica does talk about makeup products she doesn't want to buy anymore. At this point, it was definitely drama about the same 1% of people. Angelica at this point in her channel starts to use some indie brands, like doing her full first impressions. At this point, Angelica did a lot of anti-hauls. Angelica talked about Trisha Paytas exposing other YouTubers. Around August of 2020, Angelica talks about the worst makeup. Angelica continues to talk about like Dramageddon 2. Like that was the main drama of like 2020 and 2021 was Dramageddon 2. Angelica talks about her most repurchased beauty products. Angelica does like first impressions of Calatos and Hourglass. Angelica talks about empties, whether she wants to repurchase. Angelica talks about like Nikita Dragon. Angelica talks about Tana Mojo and the MTA. This was kind of big. Angelica talks about like James Charles and Manny MUA. Angelica continues to do project pans. As we go further into this, project pans become even bigger. Angelica talks about the best and worst makeup. Angelica does her first impressions of Charlotte Tilbury, like does first impressions like is it worth the money or not. Angelica definitely does like talk and report on like a lot of the like latest drama to happen. Like those were kind of her videos like talking about the drama as it's happening. Angelica talks about YouTubers coming back to YouTube like Shane Dawson. Angelica talks about makeup nobody wants. Angelica at this point on her second channel does like best and worst for every month. Angelica continues to talk about like the Tati drama. Angelica continues to talk about project pans. Angelica like does a lot of like full face of a brand, like the full face of like Dominic Cosmetics. 2020, Angelica did do a lot of anti-hauls. Angelica talks about the Call My Daddy podcast. Angelica also talks about influencers being like cancelled. Angelica at this point does like review videos, like reviews on the Raw Beauty Christine Colourpop collection. Angelica did a review on Money's Lunar Beauty Total Eclipse launch. Angelica continues to talk about Tati and the best and worst makeup.
A few moments later.
Angelica talked about brands she won't try and has never tried. Angelica did like the best and worst makeup of 2020. Angelica continues to do anti-hauls. At this point, drama's still the same 1% people. Angelica continues to talk about influencers being exposed. Angelica ranks the 2020 drama. Angelica's involved in a scandal with Smoky Glow, which I did do the Evolve of Smoky Glow. So I will leave a link to that video because that does go about in the drama a lot more detailed. So if you want to know more about the drama, I will leave a link to that video. But there was drama that involved like Smoky Glow and Angelica. Angelica continues to talk about YouTubers being exposed. Angelica talks about influencers where old clips are like resurfacing. Angelica continues to talk about like Shane Dawson and Tati, it's the same 5% of people. Going into 2021, Angelica continues to talk about like family vlogging channels. 2021, Angelica continues Project Pans, but they come. Angelica talks about Tana Mojo exposing Bella Thorne. Angelica continues to talk about makeup she doesn't want. Angelica continues first impressions, doing her first impressions of Huda Beauty. Angelica continues to talk about James Charles. 26th of January 2021. Angelica posts an eyeshadow palette collection. This is sort of the first collection video we've kind of seen. At this point, Anglica does monthly project pans. Anglica continues to talk about, does like mini teas. We're talking about loads of different topics. Anglica talks about products that are not worth the money. Anglica continues to talk about the drama. Anglica continued doing first impressions of like Charlotte Tilbury. Anglica at this point still did a lot of anti-hauls. 2021 was the year Anglica started doing makeup I'm Glad I Skipped, which is like another version of the anti-haul. Anglica continued the best and worst makeup. Anglica continued talking about influencers getting cancelled. At this point, Anglica started doing hauls on her channel. Anglica continued to talk about the Tati drama, which started in like 2019 and went all the way through to like 2021. Anglica talked about the makeup that she used in February. Anglica did videos trying makeup, like trying the Animal Crossing Colourpop. Anglica continued to talk about Jeffree Star. Anglica continued to talk about the tea, like it's sort of like drama, commentary plus tea videos.
A few moments later.
Anglica did a video on Zoella. Like Anglica predominantly at that point talked about like the American YouTube scene, but sprinkled in some YouTubers from like the British YouTube scene. Anglica talked about Jaclyn Hill's launch. Anglica talked about Shane Dawson being cancelled. Anglica continued to try like Colourpop collections, like trying the Bambi collection. At this point, Anglica started talking about like TikTok and that. But this was when like TikTok drama started. Talked about like Charlie D'Amelio. Anglica talked about makeup brands that lost their hype. Anglica talks about like TikTokers getting exposed, like Addison Rae. Anglica did a full first impressions of Milk makeup. Anglica would do videos that were like full first impressions of like one particular makeup brand. Anglica at this point did some ranking videos, like ranking colliders, like ranking her Colourpop eyeshadow palettes. Anglica continued the best and worst makeup and talking about YouTubers being called out. At this point, Anglica does a lot of ranking videos. Anglica does like hauls of the makeup she bought. Anglica also continued to talk about the TikTok drama. Anglica talks about the products she uses each month. Anglica at this point did like a lot of first impressions, like Colourpop first impressions. The Lime Coal collection. Anglica also did like a lot of mini teas. Anglica did like first impressions on the Charlotte Tilbury skincare. Anglica does a no makeup look. Anglica also continued to talk about like James Charles and Addison Rae. Anglica talks about makeup brands nobody cares about. Anglica also continues to talk about like the best makeup. Anglica continues to talk about like the TikTok drama. This is when TikTok drama kind of starts. Like TikTok gets big in like 2020 and continues to get bigger. Anglica talks about like David Dobrik. This was when the drama of the vlog squad started. Coming. Anglica talked about like the worst makeup packaging. Anglica tried the most expensive foundation. Anglica did a video reacting to people's unpopular opinions. 2020 and 2021 is when popular opinion videos became a thing. Anglica continued to talk about David Dobrik. At this point, Shane Dawson's coming back to YouTube. Anglica talks about Shane Dawson coming back to YouTube. Anglica talks about makeup one-hit wonders. Anglica continues to talk about like the drama. Anglica does a makeup haul for the month. Anglica continues to do anti-hauls. Anglica talks about the best and worst makeup during the month. Angelica continues to talk about like the drama that's going on. Angelica talks about like Shane and Ryland. Angelica talks about like the reasons Gabby Hanna needs to be cancelled. Angelica continues to do like project pans. I've watched some of Angelica's project pans, but I don't regularly watch them. Angelica does a full face of Alf Cosmetics. Angelica continues to talk about Gabby Hanna. Angelica continues to talk about like YouTube scams. Angelica does a makeup collection video, which is something that, other than the eyeshadow palette collection video, something we haven't really seen before. At this point, like the Gabby Hanna drama was big. Like, talks about Gabby Hanna getting exposed by Jessie Smiley. Also, the drama getting two's big. Angelica talks about like Tati's Breaking My Silence video. There's also a lot of Trisha Paytas drama. 16th of June, Angelica talks about creep show art. At this point, even drama channels are getting involved in drama. Drama Getting 2 continues. It's one where with Drama Getting 2, like, everyone kind of reports on everything. Like, Angelica does, like, a lot of reporting on drama videos. During June of 2021, Gabby Hanna's poetry book comes out. Gabby Hanna's poetry book was criticised by several YouTubers. This caused Gabby Hanna to react poorly and call her detractors all sorts of names, and she also spread lies about Angelica. Gabby attempted to play the victim, saying that she was fine with criticism. In late June of 2021, Angelica and other channels were called out. Even Gabby Hanna herself. Angelica talks about top 3 makeup products in every category. Angelica continues to do like anti-hauls. Angelica talks about like the Gabby Hanna series, which Angelica talks about the makeup she almost bought. Angelica continued doing like monthly project pans. Angelica talks about the products that she used up. Angelica does like the worst makeup of 2021 so far. Angelica reads the reviews of her favourite makeup products, which sounds quite interesting. Angelica continues to talk about Jessie Smiley and Gabby Hanna. Angelica talks about Logan Paul getting exposed. Angelica continues to read reviews of makeup, like read 5-star reviews of her least favourite makeup. Angelica talks about the best eyeshadow palettes of summer 2021. Angelica talks about like the best skincare. Angelica continues to talk about Gabby Hanna. Angelica talks about frenemies. It talks about the makeup nobody needs. Angelica talks about makeup, whether she wants to. Angelica talks about the most overhyped makeup. 2021, Angelica continues to talk about like cancel culture. Angelica continues to talk about the worst makeup packaging. Angelica at this point starts on her beauty channel talking about programs she watched, which is something different. But Angelica would talk about the show while watching it. I think at this point, beauty channels and drama channels started to move into like other things than just beauty. Angelica talks about the makeup that nobody wants to buy. Angelica continues to talk about influencers being cancelled. Angelica talked about like series. This was kind of the time I discovered Anglica Oales' channel, was when she was doing like the series. Angelica talked about the worst movies. Angelica continues to talk about influencers being exposed. Angelica talks about the makeup, the worst makeup she tried recently. Angelica does like a lot of best and worst makeup. Angelica did a video to do with Black Friday. Angelica continues to talk about James Charles. Angelica talks about overhyped makeup. Angelica talks about the best and worst beauty advent calendars. Angelica did her annual best and worst of 2021. Angelica talks about makeup that she needs to get rid of. Angelica did a full face of Glossier. Angelica talks about the brands that fell off in 2021. Angelica talks about the makeup that needs to leave her collection. Angelica talks about irrelevant influencers like Shane Dawson. Angelica continues to do full faces of one brand.
A few moments later.
So this is like going 2021, going into 2022. Angelica continued doing Project Pans. 8th of April, Angelica started some new channels. Angelica started a book channel which is called Angelica's Corner. She started off by doing a bookshelf tour, which I really enjoyed that video. I still don't think I've watched the whole thing. Editing me popping in to say I can confirm that with Anglica Oales' bookshelf tour. I still haven't watched the whole thing, but I'm going to watch the whole thing. So maybe I will have watched the whole thing by the time this video goes up. Angelica reacted to the lowest rated books. Angelica also started a podcast channel, which I haven't watched that channel, but I do like a book channel, makeup channel. And I do like watching some of her drama videos. Angelica talks about what makeup not to buy. Angelica talks about like Coachella fashion. Angelica talks about like book TikTok, like overhyped books on TikTok. Angelica continues to talk about Trisha Paytas and Gabby Hanna. Angelica reacts to overhyped books. Angelica continues to also talk about Gabby Hanna. Angelica also does a video on like exciting books to movie adaptations for 2022. Angelica talks about the TikTok beauty community. Angelica does like a tier list of romantic books. Angelica continues to talk about family vlogging channels. Angelica also in 2022 continues to do anti-hauls. Angelica talks about the biggest book pet peeves. Angelica talked about the Jones Road Foundation, which destroyed TikTok. Angelica talked about overhyped books on TikTok. Angelica talks about makeup products that she needs to get rid of. Angelica talks about like the worst influencers. Angelica at this point does like makeup. She's glad she skipped. Angelica talks about UK versus US book covers. Angelica at this point talks a lot about like the British YouTube scene again, like Molly May. Angelica talks about like popular books she doesn't want to read. Angelica talks about like the Hype House, which is TikTok's version of Team 10. Angelica also talks about like makeup brands, like Anastasia Beverly Hills, like does videos on like makeup brands. Angelica ranked every book she read this year from best to worst. Angelica also talks about like the big beauty guru Michelle Wong. Angelica talks about how influencers destroyed their brands. Angelica also talks about like influencer irrelevancy. Like that stays a big part of her channel. Angelica continues to talk about Gabby Hanna. She continues to talk about Jeffree Star and David Dobrik. Angelica talks about like the biggest podcast betrayal. Gabby Hanna. Angelica continues to talk about like David Dobrik. Like the influences in drama doesn't really change. She talks about Trisha Paytas. She talks about influencers that need to be stopped. Angelica talks about Mr. Beast. Angelica talks about Jaclyn Hill's lipstick launch. Continues to talk about Gabby Hanna. Angelica talks about how Jeffree Star destroyed his makeup brand. Angelica talks about the best cozy reads for autumn and winter. Angelica talks about books she would want to read for the first time. Angelica continues to talk about influencer scams. Angelica at this point talks a lot about makeup brands that she doesn't want to buy from. Angelica talks about like the Try Guys. Angelica also does talk a lot about like beauty YouTubers as well. Angelica started talking about Selena Gomez because there was the whole Selena Gomez. Talking about Selena Gomez. Angelica talked about what happened to like Tati Westbrook and how she like came back from the drama because Tati obviously she came back from the drama, but I wouldn't say her numbers are like the same. Angelica talks about like Drama Get On One, like looking back on it. Angelica talks about like Nintendo games. Angelica talks about like Gabby Hanna. Talks about beauty community scams. Angelica at this point like talks a lot about like games, and I'm like, I really should watch some of those videos because I do like Nintendo games, so I probably should. Angelica continues to talk about like the vlog squad. Angelica ranked games she played. Moving into 2023. This is when Angelica talks a lot about the TikTok drama at this point. Like at this point, it's mostly a lot of TikTok drama. Angelica talks about like Morphe and how Morphe as a brand fell off. Angelica continues to talk about like Nintendo games. Angelica talks about like brand trips. Angelica talks about like Lashgate. Angelica talks a lot about like the Michaela drama. This point it's still the same people, just different people. Like Jaclyn Hill, Michaela. Angelica plays Stardew Valley for the first time, like plays games for the first time. Angelica does like a monthly talk about like, the game she played. Angelica talks about like Jaclyn Hill. Angelica continues to talk about brand trips. Angelica continues to talk about the Michaela drama. Angelica talks about like the Selena Gomez and Hailey Bieber drama. Angelica talks about like Jaclyn Hill's new video. Angelica continues to talk about the TikTok beauty drama. Like at this point, it's very much TikTok beauty drama. Angelica talks about brands that are in trouble. Jellica talked about overhyped books. Jellica talked about makeup brands that are a flop, because there are some brands that have flopped. Jellica continues to talk about influencers that lie. Jellica continues to talk about scams. Jellica talks about like beauty influences, like this point there's some kind of a lot of beauty drama. Jellica talks about the downfall of Kylie Jenner. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's not too repetitive. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in another video. Bye.